Hello everyone, welcome back to PolyCosm. We wanted to do a little introductory video this week to, well, introduce our new concept creation project, which is called Nurbek.
We've basically started with the idea of a character and a prop, and we want to kind of create a game pitch based on that character.
Yeah, so a theoretical game.
There's no
real game.
So we kind of want to create some like isometric in-game screenshots, some footage as a potential pitch for a studio or a client or whoever is interested, really.
Yeah. So Nurbek means light chieftain in Turkish. The reason we went with that name is, one, it sounds pretty cool, I think.
Yeah.
And it really fits the concept of the character. I had this idea when I was just randomly sketching, I think one day, of a character carrying a really big oversized lantern with them.
We don't really have anything like set in stone. We just kind of have this rough idea and we kind of just want to see where the project takes us. So we're just going to have fun with it as per usual. So.
And one last thing, we wanted to thank you all for all your support so far. We really appreciate it.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah, it's been a great journey so far, and we hope to make more content for you in the future. Right, with all that said, let's get started. Okay, to get started, I did some rough silhouette sketches. I'm going to go ahead and draw over these roughly to try and explain the thought process. I know this character is carrying a lantern, so where this lantern is placed and its size and relation to the rest of the character is quite important. In this first example, the lantern is sorta in the middle and creates a composition that starts small at the top, becomes big in the middle, and medium at the bottom. Placing the big shape in the middle can create a balanced look and give the impression of a stable, reliable character. This relation of big, medium, small, and the transition between shapes is what I'm experimenting with. You can have the big shapes at the top, then narrow towards the bottom to create a top-heavy design. The top-heavy design can imply power and brute force in the character, but this is not always the case. As you can see in this example, we have a character that still has a big shape at the top, but doesn't give the same feeling of brute force as the previous one has. I'm also hinting at different shape languages working together, like in this one where a round shape is complementing mostly box-like design. The round shapes imply a soft, friendly nature, so this character could be a strong, stable, and friendly type. It's a good idea to play off different shape languages against each other to create interesting combinations. Here we have a design that is bottom heavy with the lantern being dragged on the floor. The bottom heavy design here implies a slowness and weight overall, which fits the idea of him slowly walking while dragging the lantern behind him. The angles of the shapes can give different impressions as well. Shapes that are mostly diagonal will seem dynamic and sort of unstable. Once the overall shape is established, you can start thinking about how it's broken into secondary shapes, how the big, medium, small shapes are balanced and play off each other. I've decided to get some feedback from Christina at this point, and after talking over these for a bit, we decided to go with this one thumbnail. Now I'm going to have that thumbnail on the side and sketch the character again. You could work straight over the thumbnail as well, if you want, but in this case I felt like sketching it again by using the thumbnail as a rough guide. I wanted to make sure the anatomy of the character is spot on from the get-go. My first attempt here was a failure, in all honesty. I didn't get to capture the posture really well. I think my second attempt managed to hit the mark though. I really wanted Nurbek to look like all the years of carrying this lantern through dangerous terrain has worn him down quite a bit. Being able to capture the correct pose is essential when it comes to designing a character that tells a strong story. How our character stands, how they carry themselves can tell us a lot about them. This is something that happens in the very early stages of the design, so I strongly recommend taking the time to find the right pose you're looking for before you go into any further detail. One of the biggest inspirations for this character was these porters we call Hamal in Turkey. Not something you see around anymore really, but they were still kinda around when I was a kid. You'd see them carrying all sorts of stuff around inside these big wicker baskets on their backs. I should also note here that the sharp blade on Nurbek's walking stick isn't really for fighting, even though he might use it for that if it comes down to it. But instead I imagine him using it to reach up and behind him to the sliding door, so he can open it and unleash the swarm of insects that are stored inside the lantern. Okay, let's take a moment to examine my design logic in this character. As you can see, the lantern is my dominant shape. It also blends with the top part of the character's body to create my big shape. For the medium shape, we have his legs at the bottom of the design. And as for the smaller shapes, we have his arms, his walking stick, and the chains. By varying the sizes of these main shapes, our design starts to have a personality and a unique look. Then, we can start thinking about the smaller shapes that exist within these portions. I have all these round shapes that are scattered around the design, in mostly varying sizes. The round shapes are complemented by the sharper edges. This creates a consistent shape language that is unique to this character. It also helps me communicate his story better. He's a guy who's possibly good-natured and helpful, but also has the potential to cause harm to protect himself. I've been getting into some smaller shapes with Nurbek's design now, but left the lantern still pretty rough because I wanted to design that separately on its own, as it is a very important element of the character. So as usual, I'm getting started with some rough thumbnails here, exploring a variety of shape languages. I'm trying to stay zoomed out and always prioritizing the overall shape design. I'm also sketching some indications of functionality here and there, such as an opening this lantern might have on it. One of my initial ideas was for this lantern to be housing trapped insects that are similar to fireflies. This opening would function as a way for this swarm to get in and get out of the lantern. This way, Nurbek can unleash them upon anyone foolish enough to pose a threat to him. I quite like the idea of having ropes and pieces of fabric wrapped around the lantern. I think it gives it some personality and makes it look more rough and scrappy, which does make sense as this would be an old lantern that Nurbek has used for a very long time and possibly had to fix it with scrap that he scavenged. Okay, once again, I summon Christina to unleash her feedback powers on this sheet of sketches, and after a lot of shouting and cursing at each other, we decided to take some of our favorite elements from a select few sketches and combine them into this final sketch. I'm going to go back to the character sketch now and apply the lantern design there. In the original thumbnail sketch, the shape of the lantern looks rectangular, so I wanted to incorporate that into the final sketch. Like I mentioned previously, I think this rectangular shape complements the overall round shape language quite well. Okay, I think I like how things are looking overall, so I can start to shift my focus on the smaller shapes now. I am adding details here and there, and clarifying more functional stuff like how this lantern is attached to Nurbek's back, or how that sliding part on the lantern opens and shuts. Okay, it's turnaround time. I'm going to be drawing the turnaround for the lantern, so Christina can reference that when she's modeling it. I'll be using the symmetry tool in Photoshop here to help me out with getting an accurate design. Later on, I'll be turning off the symmetry and adding freehand details to make sure the design isn't too symmetrical, which can make it look too manufactured and artificial. I need this lantern to look rough and scrappy. It has seen years of use, and the way it looks needs to support the story it's telling. I was looking at a lot of old lantern designs, as well as antique stoves while working on this. Christina insisted I give her credit for suggesting me the stove idea, but I'm pretty sure I came up with that myself, so she's not getting it. I really like these ornamental details antique stoves have on them, so I tried to incorporate these into the lantern a little. I'll be definitely referring back to these later on, as we are working on the final concept. Here I'm including a wee call-out drawing to show how the sliding opening will function. This is an important part, because we want this part to actually be animated in the final 3D model, so we need to make sure it can work mechanically. And that's it! Here's the final sketch sheet for Nurbek and the lantern turnaround. I'm quite happy with the results we got so far. I'm really looking forward to how this is going to develop within the next few weeks. Next week, Christina is going to model the lantern, and the week after, I'm going to show you guys how to bring the whole concept to a finish. Phew! Feels like we just covered a lot of ground here. I hope everything was clear enough, but feel free to let us know in the comments if you have any questions. As always, thanks for your time, and we'll see you next week. Bye everyone!